What is up, y'all? Back for another video. Today we will be talking about Deku and Bakugo specifically, and this is in reference to chapter 431, the last chapter of My Hero Academia. A lot of people were not satisfied with Deku and Bakugo's relationship. Thought it should have been more, but I'm here to tell y'all it actually makes perfect sense. Some people think it was underwhelming. Some people think their bond should have been more, but I'm here to tell you that they weren't even supposed to be close to begin with. Why though? I'll tell you in this video. When I say that Bakugo and Deku were never supposed to be close, I mean in the sense that they were never supposed to have a typical shonen friendship. Usually you may see the protagonist and deuteragonist have a relationship that just flows like brothers, a natural brotherhood. But in this case, they are complete opposites that are meant to impose on each other. From youth, Bakugo's always been a prideful person, someone who thinks highly of himself, a lot of confidence, but also arrogance. The fault. Deku, on the other hand, has always been more of a compassionate, humble type of kid, but also very scared and oblivious. The fault. As they grew up around each other more, they would be exposed to each other's traits. Deku not liking how mean Bakugo was to him, but also admiring his leadership and courage in situations. Bakugo being constantly annoyed, but still not getting any of that humility from Deku, and just being irritated that Deku would ever show some type of compassion to him. They weren't developing each other's traits from each other yet, but they were being exposed to them. The first time they're truly exposed to them and start developing them is in their first fight. Deku is backed into a corner by Bakugo, and Bakugo finally tells him, "What are you hiding from me? Did you have this quirk all along and just hide it from me out of pity?" Bakugo was feeling humbled and it was annoying him. Deku was feeling frustrated that Bakugo didn't get it and started finally building up that confidence to talk back to him. Something he struggled with time and time again to stand his ground with, but this was the first instance of him standing his ground and telling him, "I admire you, that's why I want to beat you." As Deku slowly started gaining this confidence and boldness because of Bakugo, Bakugo was getting a taste of humility, as this was the first time that he lost in anything, and it was to the person that he looked down to the most. All Might even tells him in the flashback during these episodes, pride is a good thing to have, but obviously it has to be to a certain extent, basically. Deku was a little ahead of pace here, but obviously he's getting the idea that he needs to be more bold and confident. Bakugo's still not warming up to this humility, but it's being exposed to him that he's getting humbled. The next big instance is their second fight, where again, they both get exposed to more of each other's qualities. Deku is basically telling Bakugo that he's not going to be a punching bag, he's not going to let him treat him anyhow. And he hasn't ever really talked to Bakugo like that, besides that first time I just mentioned. So he's building up that courage and he's building up that boldness, getting that much needed confidence. Bakugo showed a little bit of it by tearing up around Deku, but he's finally pouring out his heart to Deku and showing him that vulnerability, that softness. That's not humility yet, but he's starting to pour out to Deku and show his emotions, something that he never does. Obviously, this fight already had a big tone under it, but this was a heavier undertone that was laying throughout the series since the beginning, as I showed you guys. This has always been a thing where Deku's been a calm, soft person that just needed confidence. Bakugo being a very extremely confident person who needed humility and softness. But here's where it gets big. I never mentioned earlier, but obviously there was that fight that Deku and Bakugo had with All Might, where they had to work together to take All Might down, where Deku again started showing a little bit more boldness and confidence, talking back to Bakugo, telling him that this is why we can't have a conversation. Bakugo, with his pride, saying he'd rather lose and get help from Deku to beat All Might, and obviously Deku being heavily insulted by this because he looked up to Bakugo, and this sense of victory mentality that he had, that he always has to win no matter what, which is what really bothered him enough to actually punch Bakugo, something he's never even thought of doing. But what two things happened before that time? Well, obviously you have Deku, when he was a kid, reaching out to Bakugo in that pond. Deku trying to save Bakugo from that sludge villain, and this being that third time. This is important because Deku's values are basically being slapped into Bakugo's face, and that's a complete opposite, as I mentioned. This is going to be completely new territory for him. Territory literally being forced into him that's so new to him, to the point that he is influenced by it without even knowing. To the point that he saves Deku's life without even thinking about it, with the a second guess in the war arc. We see obviously Bakugo blast into the wave rivet stab to save his life, risking his own, just as Deku did for him all that time ago. But it doesn't stop here. Later, in Deku's little vigilante arc, we see him running away from his classmates, again, with that boldness, that confidence that he can take care of things on his own. Deku's getting this from Bakugo and obviously through his own trials and tribulations, but always being inspired by Bakugo since he was a young kid, having that victory mentality, wanting to win, being able to do things on your own. But this time it's different. Bakugo was here to correct him. Deku was saying crazy things to even All Might, his mentor, saying that he was on his level and he didn't really need his help. Even telling his classmates, get out of my way. Speaking the way Deku's never spoken to anybody before. But Bakugo does something special. Out of humility, he works together with his classmates to take Deku down and rescue him from himself. Rescue Deku from himself, I repeat. As Deku was telling them they're not on his level, something that Bakugo would never let slide. Not by anyone, how much more Deku. But next is the cherry on top. Bakugo actually apologizes. He puts his pride aside to apologize to someone, something that nobody ever saw him or imagined him doing. To say that was me, that was my fault. Bakugo had slowly been pondering on this for a while, thinking about Deku and his selflessness. As Bakugo got more humble, Deku got more confident, while still both remaining their key selves. They just adapted to these qualities. Bakugo even saying when that one is not enough, referring to Deku, that's when he steps into the fight. And Deku slowly starting to talk back to villains more, getting that confidence and boldness in his system. What had once become Deku just admiring Bakugo's confidence because of his selflessness and humility became Bakugo looking up to Deku in terms of power and getting that humility, asking himself internally, so you know it's real. Izuku, can I still catch up to you? Calling him by his real name, showing him that respect. But what does this have to do with 431? What does this have to do with the latest chapter, the last chapter of My Hero? In the last chapter, we see it wrap up perfectly as Bakugo still having that core part of his character, telling him to think more of himself, telling him that if you treat everyone special, is anyone special to you? Pushing him to Uraraka, the last test of Deku's confidence to finally talk to Uraraka about his feelings, and how Midoriya changed Bakugo. Someone who was once saying that he wanted to be the most famous person, more famous than All Might, the number one hero and strongest, now saying that he would love to see someone try to surpass him. They were meant to complement each other with their contrasts. Bakugo going from wanting to be the greatest and wanting someone to surpass him. Deku going from someone who was timid and shy to finally saying his feelings to Uraraka. And in general, just being confident. I mean, just look at this. He went from this to this in the latest chapters. Whether you think that it should have been Uraraka that he ended up with, I don't know. But it definitely makes sense for the two not to be very close with each other, but to more be like social peer role models for each other, bringing out something that they needed the most within each other. So thank y'all for watching. Hope y'all enjoyed this analysis. I had to talk about something not as serious, but just a big topic I've seen a lot of talk about. So y'all be safe and have a good one.